Hey everyone, welcome back to Extra Rise English Podcast, the show that helps you level up your English one real conversation at a time. I'm Mia.
And I'm Leo. So glad you are here.
Okay, so today we're talking about one of the most specific, most stressful, most universally dreaded moments in academic life for English learners. You're sitting in class, the professor is talking, you're following along, more or less, and then it happens. The professor stops, looks around the room, and calls your name.
The cold call.
The cold call. And suddenly, every thought in your head disappears. The thing you were just thinking about, gone. The answer you half knew, gone. And now the professor is looking at you. The whole class is looking at you. And you have approximately 2 seconds before the silence becomes unbearable.
And that 2-second window is exactly what today's about. Because most people don't know what to do in that moment, so they either panic and say something random, or they freeze and say nothing, or they say sorry and give up before they've even tried.
And none of those options feel good. None of them leave you feeling confident or capable. Today, we're going to give you a better set of options. Not just one phrase, a full toolkit for every version of the cold call. The one where you know the answer, the one where you kind of know it, and the one where you genuinely have no idea.
Because each one has a different strategy, and knowing all three means you're never truly unprepared.
Never truly unprepared. Let's get into it. This is segment 1, why the cold call hits different for English learners. Segment 1, the problem, why the cold call hits different for English learners. Leo, I want to be honest here, because I think for a lot of native speakers, being called on in class is uncomfortable. But for English learners, it's a completely different level of uncomfortable. Why is that?
There are actually 3 layers happening at once, and when you stack them together, it explains why the cold call can feel so paralyzing for someone speaking in a second language. Layer 1 is the content pressure. Do I know the answer? This is the same pressure every student feels, regardless of language. But for English learners, there's layer 2 on top of that, the language pressure. Even if you know the answer, you still have to produce it in English, in real time, out loud, in front of everyone. And those 2 pressures hit simultaneously.
Right. Native speakers only have to think about what to say. We have to think about what to say and how to say it in another language at the same time. It's like trying to solve a math problem while also translating it from another language.
Exactly. And then there's layer 3, which is the one that I think is most specific to learners from Asian academic backgrounds. In a lot of educational systems across Asia, being called on and not knowing the answer is genuinely shameful. It happens in front of everyone. It's on the record. You remember the feeling for years. So your nervous system doesn't read the cold call as, oh, a question. It reads it as danger, threat. Don't fail in front of everyone.
Yes, the shame memory is real. I remember specific moments from school where I was called on and didn't know the answer, and I still cringe thinking about it.
And that memory is sitting in your nervous system every time a professor looks around the room. So when your name gets called, your brain isn't just dealing with a question, it's also dealing with that history. All of that at once.
Which means the freeze isn't irrational, it's completely understandable. It's just not useful.
Exactly. And here's what I want to offer as a reframe before we get into the language. In most international university settings, especially in seminars, discussion classes, and tutorials, being called on isn't a punishment, it's an invitation. The professor is saying, I want to hear your thinking, not I'm testing whether you studied. The expected answer isn't always the correct answer. Sometimes the expected answer is just a genuine attempt, a real thought.
So the bar isn't be right, the bar is be present and try.
That's exactly it. And once you internalize that, the cold call becomes a lot less terrifying because you're no longer trying to be perfect. You're just trying to engage. And engaging is something you can always do, even when you don't have the full answer, especially when you don't have the full answer.
Okay, I love that reframe. Engage, don't perform. Let's get into the actual toolkit. This is segment 2, what to say in each version of the cold call.
There are 3 versions of the cold call, and each one needs a slightly different response. Let's go through them one by one. Version 1, you know the answer or you have a reasonable response. This is actually the easiest version, but a lot of English learners still stumble here because they freeze on the opening. They know what they want to say, but they don't know how to begin. So they start with or ah or sorry, and then the first word comes out shaky, and the confidence is already gone.
Yes, the shaky start affects the whole answer even when you know what you're saying.
So the fix for version 1 is having a clean, confident opening phrase that you don't have to think about. Something that buys you one breath and signals to the room that you're engaged. Phrases like, so, I think, or the way I understand it, or from what I've read, or I would say, or based on the reading, these aren't filler words. They're professional-sounding entry points that every good academic speaker uses. You hear them in seminars, in presentations, in research defenses. They sound natural because they are natural.
Right. There's a huge difference between, I think, and so, I think. One breath, same words, completely different impression.
Exactly. And once you have the opening phrase on automatic, your brain can spend that 1 second loading the actual content instead of panicking about how to start. Version 2. You kind of know the answer, or you're not fully sure. This is the most common situation. You have some idea, you read something about it, but you're not confident enough to just say it as a fact.
And most people either stay silent because they're not sure enough, or they blurt something out and immediately regret it.
Right, and both of those are unnecessary. The professional way to handle version 2 is to use what I call a confidence qualifier, a phrase that lets you share your thinking while honestly signaling that you're not completely certain. Things like, I'm not 100% sure, but I think, or if I remember correctly, or my understanding is, or this might not be exactly right, but all of these phrases do something very specific. They let you participate without overclaiming. You're not saying this is definitely the answer. You're saying this is my best current thinking, and that's always enough.
And professors actually appreciate that kind of intellectual honesty. I'm not 100% sure, but I think sounds so much better than false confidence in a wrong answer.
Much better. And it opens the door for the professor to correct you gently, or to say, you're on the right track, or to build on what you said. All of those are good outcomes. All of them are better than silence.
And version 3, the one everyone's most afraid of, you genuinely have no idea.
Right. And the instinct when you have no idea is to apologize. Sorry, I don't know. Sorry, I didn't read it. Sorry, I forgot. But the word sorry actually makes it worse. It signals to the professor and to everyone around you that something has gone wrong, that you've done something bad. And most of the time, not knowing isn't a failure. It's just a gap. Gaps are normal. Gaps are fixable. And there are ways to handle a gap that sound professional instead of defeated.
So what do you say?
3 options. Option 1, ask a clarifying question to buy yourself a moment. You say, could you give me a bit more context on what you mean by that? Or are you asking about the general principle or the specific case from the reading? Both of these questions buy you 5 to 10 seconds while your brain searches for anything relevant, and sometimes that's enough for something to surface. Option 2, be honest without apologizing. You say, I want to give you a good answer on that and I'm not fully there yet. Could we come back to me? Or simply, I'm still working through that one. I'd rather hear another perspective first and add to it.
That second one is so good. I'm still working through that one. It's honest. It's not a failure. It sounds like active thinking rather than absence of thinking.
Exactly. And option 3, if you truly have nothing and you want to be direct without apologizing, you say, I honestly don't have a confident answer on this yet, but I'm curious to hear what others think. That's it. Clean. Honest. No sorry. No self-punishment. Just, I'm here. I'm listening. I'm curious. And that's still participation.
Okay, that toolkit is so complete, and I think the most important thing across all 3 versions is no sorry. No sorry. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just participating with whatever you have in the moment.
No sorry.
That's the rule. And now, the midpoint of this episode. If what Leo just said about no sorry is a new idea for you, if you've been apologizing your way through academic English and it's never felt right, this is exactly the kind of reframe we bring every week. Subscribe right now so you never miss an episode like this one. Not for us, for the next time your name gets called.
3 situations.
3 toolkits. Say the phrases out loud now before we drill them. So, I think, the way I understand it, I'm not 100% sure, but I think I'm still working through that one. I honestly don't have a confident answer on this yet, but I'm curious to hear what others think. Say those out loud. Pause and say them now.
Segment 3, the drill. 3 cold call scenarios. Leo responds, you say it out loud with him. Ready?
Ready?
Scenario 1, you're in a literature class. The professor calls on you and asks, what do you think the author's central argument is in this chapter? You did the reading and you have an idea, but you want to make sure you start confidently without stumbling.
So, the way I understand it, the author is arguing that language shapes how we perceive reality, not just how we describe it. The central claim seems to be that the words available to us in our language actually limit or expand what we're able to think, not just what we're able to say. I thought the section on untranslatable words made that point really clearly.
That answer is so solid, and notice how he built it. So the way I understand it got him into the sentence without hesitation. He gave the argument in plain language, and then he connected it to specific evidence from the reading, the untranslatable word section, which shows he actually engaged with the material. That combination, clear claim plus specific evidence, is exactly what professors are looking for in a discussion class.
And it doesn't have to be perfectly organized. As long as it's genuinely engaged, it lands.
Say it out loud. So the way I understand it, and then give the argument in your own words from something you've read recently. Pause and try it now. Scenario 2, you're in a business class. The professor calls on you and asks, can you explain what the case study says about the company's pricing strategy? You read the case, but you're not 100% sure you got all the details right. You remember the main point, but you're fuzzy on some of the numbers.
I'm not 100% sure I have all the details exactly right, but my understanding is that the company moved to a value-based pricing model. So instead of pricing based on production cost, they priced based on what the customer was willing to pay for the outcome. If I remember correctly, there was a section about how they tested different price points with different customer segments before landing on the final structure. I might be off on some of the specifics, but that was the core shift I took from the case.
That answer is genuinely impressive. He signaled uncertainty up front. I'm not 100% sure, so the professor knows to correct him if needed. But then he gave a real substantive answer with the main concept clearly stated, and he ended with what I took from the case, which invites the professor to either confirm or add to it. That's not a weak answer, that's a thoughtful one.
And the professor hears this student read the material, engaged with it, and is being honest about where they're confident in versus what they're still processing. That's mature academic behavior.
Say it out loud. I'm not 100% sure I have all the details right, but my understanding is, and fill it in with something from your own coursework. Pause and try it now. Scenario 3, you're in a history tutorial. The professor calls on you and asks, what do you think were the main causes of the economic crisis described in this week's reading? You didn't finish the reading. You know the general topic, but you don't have a confident answer for this specific question.
I want to be honest, I'm still working through that reading and I don't have a confident answer on the causes yet, but I'm curious, would it be okay if I add something after hearing another perspective? I want to engage with the material rather than guess at an answer I haven't fully formed yet.
That response is so good. He didn't apologize, he didn't pretend, he didn't disappear into silence. He was honest about where he was with the material. I'm still working through that reading. And he immediately reframed his position as active and curious rather than absent. I want to engage with the material rather than guess. That phrase alone tells the professor, this student is here. This student cares. This student isn't trying to get away with something. And most professors will say, yes, of course, let's hear from someone else first.
And then when it comes back to you, you've heard 3 or 4 other people's answers. You have context. You can now say, building on what was just said, I think the point about the banking system connects to what the reading was arguing about credit access. And suddenly you're contributing meaningfully even from a starting point of not having finished the reading.
The conversation gives you material to work with. You just have to stay in it long enough to receive it.
Exactly. Staying in the conversation is half the work.
Say it out loud. I'm still working through that one. I'm curious to hear another perspective first. Pause and say it now. Go back and say all 3 responses out loud: the confident opening, the honest uncertainty, and the graceful no answer. Say them until they feel like options you actually have, not just examples you heard once, because the next time your professor calls your name, you want one of those 3 to be ready. All right, here's your one thing from today. There's no such thing as a wrong response to a cold call. There's only a prepared response and an unprepared one. And now you're prepared. You have 3 toolkits: confident entry phrases when you know, confidence qualifiers when you're not sure, and honest, graceful pivots when you genuinely don't have it yet. And across all 3, no sorry, because you're not doing anything wrong. You're just thinking out loud in a room full of people who are doing the same thing.
And here's something worth holding on to. The professors who cold call you in most international academic settings aren't trying to catch you out. They're trying to pull you into the conversation because they know that the students who speak in class learn more than the students who sit quietly. They're doing you a favor, and now you have the language to accept it.
Your assignment for this week: in your next class, volunteer an answer before you get called on. One answer. Use one of the opening phrases. So I think, the way I understand it, from what I've read, one phrase, one answer. Then come to the comments and tell us what happened. Did it feel different saying it out loud versus keeping it in your head? We want to know.
We genuinely do.
And if this episode gave you language for a moment you've been dreading, share it with one student who's sitting in class right now hoping they don't get called on. Not because it helps us, because that student deserves to feel prepared. Be the one who sends it to them.
And if you want more of this every single week, subscribe. We'll be here.
Thank you so much for being here on Extra Rise English Podcast. And remember,
Because one serving of English is never enough.
see you in the next episode.